Let's talk about the aftermath, the latest round of trans violence to hit America. Senior editor of Post Millennial and author of Unmasked, Andy Ngo, along with founder of Gays Against Groomers, Jamie Mitchell. Welcome to you both. Andy, I featured your post showing that the transvestite community, or as they're more commonly known, community organizers, were celebrating another attack on Christians and the innocent. I say the only hate on display in this country is from the left. Where am I going wrong?
I think what people need to realize about the identities of these mass shooters is that nobody fits into a Disney or comic book villain. They're complicated. And the manifesto that the trans shooter in Minneapolis left behind is dozens and dozens of pages long, and people with their biases can pick and choose what they want to highlight. And we're seeing Democrats do that. Oh, he said racist things. He said anti-Semitic things. Therefore, he's far right. That's not necessarily true. He also talked extensively about his trans identity. And what I thought particularly stood out and has been ignored by liberal media is that in a decoded section of his manifesto, he talked about the distress he had at regretting the realization that there is no magic wand or medicine or technology that exists that can make him be a real girl, which is what he wanted. And therefore, he moved on with this decision of what appears to be death before detransition.
Wow. Jamie, Bill Maher has been on the forefront among classical liberals debunking this whole trans myth, and Gays Against Groomers has been on the forefront of pushing back on leftists who want to exploit children to satisfy their deviant impulses, whether it's the dead bodies of children piling up, whether it's the sexual exploitation of our kids. What's behind the left's obsession with harming the most vulnerable among us, in your opinion?
I got to tell you, I get asked this question a lot, and I think there's probably three big motivators. I think first and foremost is probably money, as with kind of all the roots of evil. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, transitioning children, or just the medical transitioning of anybody, really. It's growing every year. It brings in millions. The earlier you have a person, a child hooked up to the medical system, the more money you're going to make. And people often forget that transitioning isn't a noun, it's a verb. Or to be trans isn't a noun, I should say, it's a verb. It's a lifelong process. I also think normalizing pedophilia is a motivator. If a child can consent to chopping off their healthy body parts, what can't they consent to? I think those are the big ones, really. And it's truly disgusting. The issue, people know what the issue is. Democrats, leftists, they all know. They know the truth, and they keep pushing this agenda on children and our young people, which obviously leaves them far worse off than they were to start with, which was already bad.
Yeah, in Texas, we classify those surgeons who would do something like that to a child, we classify them as child abusers, so it's not allowed in Texas. Andy, I've been horrified to watch the repeat of the Nashville shooting here, where another trans lunatic slaughtered 6 Christians, 3 of them children, as the left tells the country, oh, we can't focus on the obvious mental health problems. Oh, we certainly can't focus on the role in the creation of these monsters that the left plays. Shouldn't real journalists be committed to exposing, what CNN, ABC, and other fake news outlets are busy trying to hide from the general public?
They should, and they must. And if they did, they would observe that this uptick of trans mass shooters and killers is not a figment of the far right's imagination. The shooting yesterday follows on the Nashville Covenant School shooting, 2 shootings in Colorado involving trans and trans non-binary identifying people. And also in Maryland, just in the last 7 years, there's been at least 5 cases of transgender or trans non-binary mass shooters and killers. This is a new phenomenon, and I don't have a training in medicine or psychology, but a question I have for the public is, what do you think happens when grievance, political ideology, mental health comorbidities, potentially drugs, and hormones are introduced with deadly weapons?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm renaming it political trans. That's exactly what we're dealing with here. Jamie, last question. I've only got a minute. You know, I've heard troubling stories that say major media companies have bought into the trans lie, political trans. These leftist head honchos at these media companies who would sacrifice their own children on this altar of left-wing political trans instead of being grown-ups and parents. They are working to silence media hosts from discussing this issue openly. Isn't it time those companies are exposed before the next mass shooter is created and before more children pay with their lives?
Obviously, you know, we're far enough along now where woke is dying. It's not popular anymore, but we will continue to feel the ripple effects of this demonic ideology until people are held accountable and actually start saying the truth and being unafraid to. You know, we have to be honest. It's not a game. Lives are on the line. And unfortunately, even though gender ideology seems to be regressing in many parts, we are going to continue to see things like this as long as the lie is perpetuated. And leaders need to take accountability and be honest with their audience and the public.
Yes, politicians should actually be leaders for a change. Andy, no. Jamie Mitchell, thank you very much. Appreciate the time. Straight ahead in the